So we're starting like it's in chronological order. So take us back to Alert Bay, what it looked like when you were growing up.
I was born in the small native village of Alert Bay. You take a ferry from Port McNeill, which is on the north end of Vancouver Island, and it's about a 45-minute trip to this tiny little island, kind of smack dab in the middle of the strait. I was born there. My mom and all of her siblings were born there. And that place is home for me. It's a really special place. It's super beautiful. There's only 6 kilometers of paved road. It's super, super small. About 800 people live there. And when we were kids growing up, we pretty much just had free reign of the island.
Cool. What did you do as kids growing up?
As kids growing up, we spent a lot of our time on the beach. We kind of were able to walk from our house down to my grandma's house and just play on the beach. We'd build forts out of driftwood. We'd search for crabs. We'd play in the tide pools. Just kind of do kid stuff. It was really cool because there was no stoplights or anything on the island. So we actually never even wore seatbelts until we moved to Courtenay, which is so sketchy, but back in the day. It was just like a really unique and special place to get to grow up and spend part of my childhood there. It kind of just felt like Neverland.
That's awesome. Do you have memories of the totem poles in Alert Bay?
Yeah, there's lots of totem poles in Alert Bay. It's actually home of the world's largest totem pole, still to this day. I think it stands at about 180 feet tall, and it's up by the big house on the reserve. I remember visiting there when I was a kid and just being so in awe of this super tall stick. It used to have a really beautiful carved sun on the top of it, which has since fallen off. And I just remember it's crazy. It's so kind of starting to become a little decrepit, like the paint's worn off, the sun's fallen off. But when I was a kid, I remember it being this vibrant, beautiful totem pole with this huge sun on the top of it. There's also the traditional burial grounds that are right at the front of town. And there's a lot of totem poles there. So we'd always pass those in the car. And I don't know, they were just always kind of part of our day-to-day life.
That's awesome. Can you tell me how it made you feel looking at those totem poles and the burial ground and the big house, things of culture? How did you have any internal thoughts?
As a 3-year-old, no. I don't think I had very many internal thoughts about it. They were just part of our life and really big part of that community.
Cool. Can you describe what your dad was like when you were young?
My dad is a commercial fisherman, so he spent all of the summers away fishing. Sometimes we get to go out on the boat with him and go food fishing with the family, which is always really cool. But he was just in the off season, he was always down for adventures. He would take us out on the Zodiac, we'd chase the ferry waves, he'd take us 4x4ing in the truck and doing super irresponsible parent things now, looking back. But those things were what made my childhood so special. And it was really cool because he didn't work for a lot of the year. He would take kind of all of the cousins, all these other kids and just pile them in the Zodiac and just do tons of fun stuff with us all the time. We were just always on adventures. And, there was one time he was, a volunteer firefighter also. And me and all my sisters were in figure skating. So one winter when it got cold enough to it basically was cold enough to snow, but it didn't snow in Alert Bay. Him and my grandfather took the fire truck up to Gator Gardens and sprayed the whole swamp down so it would freeze overnight. And, they just kept spraying it till the ice got thick enough that we could skate on it. And I remember being up there when I was 3 or 4 years old, just hobbling around on my skates, with my sisters and my whole family and just all those lanterns everywhere. It was so beautiful and such a cool thing. And he would just always do fun stuff like that for us.
Can you tell us what the Gator Gardens is?
Gator Gardens is an ecological park in Alert Bay. Whenever people go to Alert Bay, there's 3 places I tell them to go. It's the Umista Cultural Center, Duchess's Bannock, best bannock in town, and the Totem Pole and the Big House, and then Gator Gardens. It's this really beautiful, it's actually a swamp kind of, but it's really, really beautiful. And there's just a boardwalk all the way through it. And there's all these trees that they look almost like there was a fire, but a lot of them are just dead because of, there's so much acidity in the soil there. There's some really neat nature stuff that goes on that makes that swamp so special. But yeah, it was a huge part of our childhood. We'd go there all the time as kids and just run around on the boardwalk and try and see how many logs we could jump off the boardwalk till we fell in the swamp. But yeah, every time I go home, I always go back there.
That's hilarious.
I know. It's so weird. It's like, yeah, go check out this swamp. It's super nice. It actually is. It's like so beautiful. And I don't know. It's really cool. But it seems weird when you describe it to people. You're like, hey, go check out this swamp. There's also skunk cabbage.
I found like when I went there, I was like, I was a bit like, whoa, this is just a swamp. But then I was like, I guess there isn't that many swamps in BC. I guess it's really unique.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's really cool. Like just the dead trees and the way they come out of the water and the moss and all the salal. There's just like a lot of really beautiful vegetation there. And I don't know. I guess it was just this big part of my childhood. So I always want to go back there, and it holds a really special place for me. There's actually like a burnt, hollowed out tree that my dad always told us Winnie the Pooh lived in. And so, I don't know, whenever I go back, I always see that tree and think about that.
That's so funny. What characteristics did your dad have? Or does your dad have?
My dad is very, I don't know, he's a very talkative person. He's very outgoing. If you get in conversation with him, you have to be prepared for like a good hour minimum. But he's a really kind man and he's super generous and, he's very adventurous. I mean, I think, just the way that we grew up and the way he raised us, was to really love the outdoors and to embrace that and utilize it as much as we could. And I think, growing up, his family didn't have a lot of money. They immigrated from Ireland when he was about 6 years old. And, I think he had a pretty hard childhood. Like his mother passed away pretty young and, my grandfather had a hard time supporting that many kids. I think there was 6 siblings. He kind of, once he was done high school, he like made his way out west and decided he was going to become a commercial fisherman and met my mom. And I think he ended up doing really well for himself and was able to provide us with a lot of opportunities that he never had as a kid.
Awesome. How would you describe your mom?
My mom is very creative. She's, probably the most creative person I know. She just like will get her hands on something and just like, I don't know, magic just happens. And her house is, we always call it like Alice in Wonderland and it's Whoville at Christmas. Like she's just the most creative, eccentric woman. She loves colors and, it's so funny. Anytime I bring anyone to her house in Corny, they're like, whoa, like, what's going on in this place? And, she's just, very creative in that way. And but she's a bit of a hard woman too. Like she swears a lot. She drinks Lucky. She smokes cigs. She's pretty funny. Actually, she's a bit of an anomaly, but, she's a really strong woman. And, I think always kind of instilled that in me and my sisters.
That's awesome. And they would go away together sometimes to fish, or?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
When my dad's a commercial salmon seiner, and when my parents were still together, like my whole childhood, they would go away fishing every year. So my mom worked on the boat. Even though she can't swim, she never learned how to swim, which is crazy. She'd just like wear a life jacket and really hope she didn't fall in. She's like petrified of swimming. She would go out on the boat every year with my dad, and they would be gone for probably about 3 months. So every summer I would go to Alert Bay and stay with my grandmother or my aunt. So even though we moved away from the bay when I was pretty young, I always spent my summers there.
Did you ever miss them or miss him or worry about him when he was gone?
I don't remember ever like worrying about my parents. I think just growing up on the boat and on the water from a really young age, I never really had a fear of it. And especially at a younger age, I just never thought about what could go wrong, or like those kind of consequences. when it was really rough and crazy, I thought it was the best time, and it was super fun, and my whole family would be puking over the side of the boat, and I'd be captaining.